evening, ghouls and fiends. Welcome once again to another edition of the Ministry of Horror. I'm your host, Tezz, and this should have been a live week. It should have been a Friday night stream over on twitch.tv/Tezzius, where we would have done news, reviews, and then we would have looked at Lucio Fulci's Gates of Hell trilogy. That was the initial plan. But Alien Romulus came out, and I almost wasn't going to be able to see it on Friday night, but that wasn't going to happen. I had to watch it. I was very, 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 very hyped to get down to the cinema and watch that. So me and a friend Tom went last night. Time of recording is Saturday, so we went Friday 16th opening, sort of general release. So no live show, no talk about Lucio Fulci's feature presentations. This is a recorded show, but we will have later on a review of Alien Romulus. Now, as per all of my reviews, it's going to be generally spoiler free. I try and sort of just talk about the opening third of the film and not go too much into the weeds with it. But it has been mentioned, will I ever talk spoilers? So potentially later next week there may be a bonus podcast where me and guest Gruff, who will return, will talk about Alien Romulus full spoilers. It'll all be marked as full spoilers to avoid anyone listening to it then complaining that they're spoilers, because that sort of thing does happen. But yeah, that's to be confirmed, but that's kind of the general plan at the moment. So we're going to be reviewing that. We're also going to be reviewing a new film, which is coming out on the 26th of August. So I got an exclusive early look at a film called Lore. That will be coming exclusively to the Icon Film channel from the 26th of August. It's got a few names from the world of British horror and TV, but also a guy who's really been making a bit of a name for himself in horror, known for appearances in some of Rob Zombie's films. Richard Brake appears in Lore. So we're going to be reviewing that a bit later on. General kind of update stuff. So we did get a game stream done last week, and that originally was going to be either Still Lies the Deep or maybe Silent Hill 3. But I ended up doing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. I know it seems very odd for a horror channel to be playing COD, but they're the sort of games that I grew up loving until I kind of dropped off because it just felt too difficult to get into the multiplayer of, the original Modern Warfare 3. I found with those games that it just felt like you drop into a map and be sniped through two buildings from like 5 miles away within seconds of spawning. It just wasn't fun, and it really then kind of killed my enjoyment of the COD games kind of onwards from that point. I dip into campaigns here and there, but never really had the same enjoyment. But Modern Warfare 3 is on Game Pass, downloaded it. I've sort of dabbled a little bit of Modern Warfare 2, but again, not really having a proper session. Now, I don't know whether it's because I've set my Xbox up to play with my monitor as opposed to this massive TV, which we can't see, but it's not that comfortable to game with the TV because I have to basically have my chair lying down. Whether it's the comfort aspect makes the game more enjoyable, I don't know. But I've been having a great time. So we jumped in, we did about an hour and a half or hour and 40 minutes stream, doing a few death matches. Then we did zombie mode in the open world, and that was really fun for me. So I'm going to plan to do a bit more of that as and when. Other news. So I've been a bit of an Arrow boy when it comes to horror physical media for quite a while. But someone had shared, and then it had been commented on by the distribution company, their collection of Second Sight films. And the one that caught my eye, funnily enough, was the one that I didn't end up buying yet. And that was May. Now, May is a film by Lucky McGee. I haven't seen it for a long time, but it was one that really stuck with me when I first saw it. And they've got a very nice box set of that. But the ones that I saw that I thought, oh, God, I kind of really, really want them because they're really nice collections is the Thai West found footage film The Sacrament. Lovely box. And also, one that I haven't seen for a very long time, but again, it left an impact with me. It really kind of stuck with me. Is Session 9. Lovely box with a book and photo cards. So we're entertaining this evening, but hopefully after recording the show, I might be able to watch one of them after I've got some chores done. So yeah, get physical media. Streaming services are great for convenience, but I often find it when there's films on streaming platforms that I go, yeah, I want to watch that at some point. Not just yet. I'll get around to watching that. I'll add it to my watch list that I never look at, but just not just yet. And then when I go to watch it, it's not there anymore. Get physical media. Just get physical media because the picture quality is the best, and then you've got it forever. So yeah, that's my little plug. So Second Sight Films, their box sets are very nice. Arrow box sets are also very nice. So yeah, that's kind of it for the little update rambles. I think it's probably about time that we keep this train rolling and we get on with the horror news. This is the news. Ho, 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 ho. Something set off the dogs. I should probably check what that is. I think it was a cat. Anyway, if I remember, I'll cut this bit out. As per usual, all of our horror news comes from bloodydisgusting.com. Check them out. Check out their X account or whatever. Great source of news. Really good write-ups. Great website. Love it. So first up is the 6 new horror films releasing this week, including Alien Romulus. This comes from John Squires. So first off, When the Dead Are Back, what do we do with them? The filmmaking group RKSS, who did Turbo Kid, but I've not seen, Summer of '84, which is very good, offers a fresh take on the undead in the Screambox original horror comedy We Are Zombies, now streaming on VOD and Screambox. In a city infested with the living impaired, also known as non-cannibal zombies, 3 slackers after easy money must fight small-town crooks and an evil megacorporation to save their kidnapped grandma. Watch the official We Are Zombies trailer below. RKSS, the Canadian filmmaking collective composed of Francois Simard, Anouk Wissel, and Johan Carl Wissel, wrote and directed the horror comedy based on the comic book series The Zombies That Ate the World. Alexandra Nachi, Derek Johns, Megan Peter Hill, Vincent Leclerc, Benz Antoine, and Carlo Mestroni star. We Are Zombies delivers laughs and bloodshed at Fantasia International Film Festival, Sitges Film Festival, and Fantastic Fest, drawing comparisons to such crowd pleasers as Shaun of the Dead, Zombieland, and Warm Bodies. So that sounds pretty... I mean, that's pretty high praise. Like, slapping on Shaun of the Dead or to an extent Zombieland as a comparison on a film is quite a high mark for comparison. So sometimes that can lead to potential higher expectations than necessary and then disappointment. The still that's showing on the website looks insane. And I've heard good things about Turbo Kid. Summer of '84 I caught on Shudder when I first sort of got Shudder, and it's a neat little teen horror. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good kind of serial killer whodunit. And I thought it was decent. So yeah, the crew behind this sound pretty good. So I'm going to be keeping an eye out for We Are Zombies. Screambox original. We don't have Screambox in the UK, so hopefully we get it somewhere. Next up, after being released in theatres last month, Well-Go USA's werewolf movie The Beast Within, starring Kit Harington of Game of Thrones fame, is now available on VOD outlets at home. In the werewolf movie, after a series of strange events leads her to question her family's isolated life on a fortified compound deep in the English wilds, 10-year-old Willow follows her parents on one of their secret late-night treks to the heart of the ancient forest. But upon witnessing her father undergo a terrible transformation, she too becomes ensnared by the dark ancestral secret that they've tried so desperately to conceal. Ashley Cummings, James Cosmo, Quaileen Spingle, Miriam Arabelle Maslin, and Adam Basil also star in The Beast Within, the narrative debut of filmmaker Alexandra J. Farrell. I mean, werewolf films, I can give or take werewolf films. I mean, in terms of like the classic monsters, I've always liked kind of vampires when done well up there. Werewolves, really hit and miss. Really hit and miss. American Werewolf in London, The Howling, are pretty good. The Howling's got great set pieces and moments. As a story, I'm not that fussed with it. But it's, yeah, I don't know. I mean, if this appears on streaming, I'd give it a watch. I'm not that hyped for it. I mean, Kit Harington, he was Jon Snow. Yeah, I've seen him in other things, and it's maybe a little bit one note. Don't know. I haven't seen much range outside of that kind of stoic, tragic, put upon individual who's always surrounded by death. I don't know. Neon, next up, has been having a killer year in 2024, and they're back with Mother's Instinct, a Hitchcockian thriller that was released on VOD outlets at home on Tuesday, August 13th. The psychological thriller stars Academy Award winners Jessica Chastain and Anne Hathaway, I should say. Mother's Instinct is based upon the novel Derrière le Haine by Barbara Ebel, and is also a remake of director Oliver Masset de Passes' same titled French language film from 2018. From director Benoit Delhomme, the new film is set in the early 60s. Best friends and neighbours Alice and Celine live an idyllic traditional lifestyle with manicured lawns, successful husbands, and sons of the same age. But life's perfect harmony is suddenly shattered after a tragic accident. Guilt, suspicion, and paranoia combine to unravel their sisterly bond, and a psychological battle of wills begins as the maternal instinct reveals its darker side. Writer Sarah Conrad pens the adaptation. I think this has been available in the UK on VOD for a little while. I vaguely recognise the title, and then seeing the stars of it, I'm sure that this has been available to rent at least for maybe a month, at least for a few weeks. So I didn't necessarily think it was horror. I mean, psychological thriller, so it's kind of adjacent. But I'm not familiar with the novel it's based upon or the original film from 2018 from Le Français. But again, fine. Sounds kind of interesting, but nothing in that draws me to really want to watch it. I mean, I do enjoy a good thriller, and there is something about films where there's like an idyllic setting before tragedy strikes and everything starts unraveling. If done well, that can be pretty gripping, but yeah, I don't know. I haven't really heard what buzz has been about that film. Next, the big new release for the week is, of course, 20th Century Studios' Alien Romulus, which is opening exclusively in theatres nationwide beginning Thursday, August 15th. From director Fede Alvarez, the film will be available in IMAX, Dolby Cinema, 4DX, Screen X, and formats everywhere. Final trailer is available now. In Romulus, while scavenging the deep ends of a derelict space station, a group of young space colonizers come face to face with the most terrifying life form in the universe. Kaylee Spenny leads the cast alongside Isabella Merced, David Johnson, Archie Renault, Spike Fern, and Eileen Wu. Fede Alvarez co-wrote the script with Rodo Sayiguas. Ridley Scott is on board as a producer for the film, the first movie in the franchise to be released by Disney. Alien Romulus is based on characters created by Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett. We're going to be reviewing that, obviously, a bit later on, so I don't need to say much more on Alien Romulus, other than if you're a fan of the Alien series, there is a new Alien film in the cinema. And then next up, Devon Sawyer of Chucky TV series, Final Destination and Idle Hands fame, gets feral in the wilderness in Consumed, the latest horror movie by the Butcher Brothers, who did The Hamiltons and The Violent Kind. The Violent Kind sounds familiar. I don't think I've seen The Hamiltons. I'm going to do a little quick Michael Google of The Violent Kind. No, I've not seen that. No, nothing in that looks familiar. Consumed, released in theatres and on demand Friday, August 16th. In the film, trapped between a madman seeking revenge and a skin-stealing monster, a married couple must find the strength to fight and make it out of the woods alive. Courtney Havelson and Mark Famigaletti co-star as Jay and Beth, a married couple taking a celebratory camping trip a year after Beth's cancer remission, who find themselves trapped between a wild madman and a skin-stealing monster. The Butcher Brothers, aka director Mitchell Altieri and producer Phil Flores, direct from a script by David Calvert. Jeffrey Allard, one of the producers behind 2003's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot, produced the upcoming horror movie. Yeah, Devon Sawyer's kind of one of those unsung Scream Kings or horror princes. I don't know what the term would be. I mean, Idle Hands is a film that I keep meaning to give a rewatch at some point because I used to love that when I was growing up. And Final Destination as well is brilliant. We watched that on stream actually when we were doing the watch parties. But I'm not familiar with the Butcher Brothers. The Hamiltons I've not heard of, and the Violent Kind I definitely am not familiar with. But one of the producers behind the 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot, I mean, that is a pretty good reboot as far as horror reboots go. So, okay, and the setup for the story, I mean, a skin-stealing monster, that does sound like that could be pretty flippin' gnarly. So, yeah. And then I think lastly on the new films, Netflix paid a reported $65 million for the rights to The Deliverance in a hot bidding war, and they're bringing the film to select theatres on August 16th ahead of the Netflix debut. It will arrive on Netflix beginning August 30. Omar Epps, Demi Singleton, Miss Lawrence and Anthony B. Jenkins star in The Deliverance, which is being described as an exorcism thriller. Andra Day, Glenn Close, Monique, Orjuan Ellis, Caleb McLaughlin and Tasha Smith also star. In the film, Ebony Jackson, a struggling single mother fighting her personal demons, moves her family into a new home for a fresh start. But when strange occurrences inside the home raise the suspicions of Child Protective Services and threaten to tear the family apart, Ebony soon finds herself locked in a battle for her life and the souls of her children. Netflix The Deliverance is based on a true story, and in addition to directing, Lee Daniels also wrote the script with David Coggeshall, Elijah Bunyan and Thomas Westfall. Yeah, there you go. An exorcism thriller. Aren't most exorcism films thrillers to an extent, or horrors? But based on a true story, how much of it is true? You just don't know. But it's a new horror coming to Netflix, and if one thing Netflix have not had for a long time is new horror. So, yeah, I'm gonna be keeping an eye out on that one because I just have not touched Netflix for a while. Netflix has even got the latest series of Cobra Kai on there. Haven't watched it. You know, I binged the previous series when they dropped, but I haven't been going on Netflix for a long time. That used to be my primo subscription service, but how times have changed. So next up for the horror news, Fede Alvarez explains why Alien Romulus was originally going direct to Hulu. The first film, and this is a John Squires write-up, the first film in the Predator franchise in the wake of the Disney takeover of 20th Century Fox, Prey, went direct to Hulu back in 2022. But the Alien franchise's first film under the Disney umbrella is getting a big theatrical release this weekend, but that wasn't always the case. As you may recall, Alien Romulus was originally announced as a Hulu movie, with director Fede Alvarez explains what changed and when it changed in a new chat with Variety. It was back in 2021 that Alien Romulus was planning a Hulu debut, which Alvarez says was a reaction to theatres being completely gone at the time, deep in the heart of the pandemic. That decision was not made at the point where theatres were healthy, Alvarez explains to Variety. But it was always going to be an ambitious movie for a streaming platform. He continues, I remember making an announcement to everybody that this movie was going to theatres and there was a big cheer. I was like, wow. Even the gaffer cares that this goes into theatres. The pivot to theatrical for Alien Romulus looks to have been a smart one on the part of 20th Century Studios, as the film opened to 6.5 million in Thursday previews last night. The Hollywood Reporter notes Romulus bit off a strong 6.5 million in Thursday previews, putting the highly anticipated August event on course to open to a better than expected 40 million plus, in another win for the Disney film empire and the summer box office overall. And then it goes on to talk about Alien Romulus's plot. So, yeah, I am hopeful that this does well, because Prometheus did well, but Covenant was a financial disappointment for 20th Century Fox, which put, for better or worse, Ridley Scott's prequel trilogy on hold. I would have liked to have seen how he was going to end it, but at the same point, I'd have probably just been satisfied with some cliff notes, like a little director chat video to say, here's what I was going to do. Because Covenant was a film I was so excited for and just let down in many ways. We've done a Xenomorph episode before, so I would have talked then about my kind of thoughts on the film, but it's a gorgeous looking film. Just the plot, the characters' actions, there's just a lot that just was a real miss for me. And also the treatment of Shaw, who was our protagonist in Prometheus. It felt like we were getting the same sort of treatment that Newt and Hicks had in Alien 3 again. And that left a sour taste in the fans' mouth, so doing that again for Covenant just felt just poor choice. There could have been another way to do that, and even if you had that occurring, but just having, anyway, we're going off on a tangent here. Generally though, yeah, I think this is the sort of film, I'm a big advocate for the cinema. It's a film you want to watch in the cinema, especially I think we were watching this in an iSense screening at Odeon, and it was so loud, like not like deafeningly loud, but just screen looked brilliant, and the audio just really puts you in the moment. So you have to watch it loud, you have to watch it in the dark, and I would recommend doing that at the cinema. So yeah, watching this premiering at home I don't think would just hit the same. Next up, I don't know if we talked about this, we might have touched on it in the previous news, or it might have actually been in the Discord. So Mike Wilson writes up, excuse me, 2 new Halloween video games are in the works from Evil Dead the Game developers. So the Shape is making his way back to video games. IGN's reported this morning that Evil Dead the Game developers, I didn't put 2 and 2 together that Boss Team Games made the Evil Dead game, are in the process of developing on not 1 but 2 video games based on John Carpenter's classic slasher Halloween. Speaking of Carpenter, the Horror Master is on board with at least one of the upcoming games. Now, since then, there has been an announcement, so I won't really read the rest of it. One of the games coming out is a platformer game, and there's kind of 2, it's like almost 2 in 1 games. You can get them separately or get them together. It's a platformer game of Halloween where you play as Michael Myers. There's also a platformer game of Ash versus the Evil Dead where you play as Ash. It's retro, 8-bit, 16-bit, whatever kind of setting. The Ash versus the Evil Dead trailer I thought looked kind of interesting in terms of the setting, the kind of the deadites that you're fighting. The Halloween one, you're playing as Michael Myers and like slashing through like cyborgs and stuff. Like, I don't know. I just kind of thought, how is this Halloween other than you're playing as Michael Myers? Like, the news was exciting. Excuse me. The news was exciting, and my initial kind of thoughts were, okay, it's 2 new games. I imagine one of them is going to be an asymmetrical Dead by Daylight, Evil Dead, Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of style game. You know, like the 1v4 or 4v7, whatever it is. But you're in a map, you've got to try and escape. The other people are playing on your team, but then there's another group of people or person playing as the killer. There's an audience for that. The Evil Dead game died within a year. Texas Chainsaw Massacre seems to be doing okay, to my knowledge. Dead by Daylight's been going a long time. But that doesn't really interest me. Like, those games could be fun. We've talked about them before. I imagine they're much better if you're playing in a group of people you know. My experience has been, yeah, kind of fun for like 10 minutes, but that's it. There's not enough there to keep me kind of coming back to it. So I'd hoped that one of these would be single player, kind of Resident Evil 1-esque stalk and slash, where you're trying to get away from Michael Myers, who's almost like a nemesis-like figure in terms of he just can't really be stopped. I don't think we're going to get that, which I think is a shame, because then to me it just feels like we're slapping the property onto just another kind of game. And with the announcement that one of these is a 8-bit, 16-bit platformer, I just have to assume that we're going to have Dead by Daylight. And also, you've already had Michael Myers in Dead by Daylight and Laurie. So, yeah, I was initially quite hyped. The platformer game, I'm not really a platformer gamer. I mean, I've played a bit of Blasphemous. I need to jump back into that. But the reason I haven't jumped back into it is because it's just not a genre that pulls me in as a gaming fan. And I am more of a single-player gamer than a multiplayer gamer, so I don't know. I don't hold out a huge amount of hope, but seeing it going into the video game property is pretty cool, I guess. But how it's used, I don't know. Next up, from John Squires, BloodDiscussing.com, Longlegs just passed $100 million at the worldwide box office. Directed by Osgood Perkins, who will also be doing the upcoming The Monkey, the adaptation of the short story by Stephen King, which is a terrifying short story. Osgood Perkins did the neon horror hit Longlegs, and it is proven to have long legs at the box office the last several weeks, and the film just hit another massive milestone. First reported by Variety today, Longlegs just passed $100 million at the worldwide box office, making it the highest-grossing indie movie, horror or otherwise, of 2024 so far. Variety notes with a gross of $72 million in the US and Canada, and a total of $100 million at the global box office, it's also the top-grossing R-rated horror film of 2024. The only other horror movie to pass $100 million at the worldwide box office this year is A Quiet Place, Day One, which is currently sitting at a whopping $260 million worldwide. Perkins' Longlegs is also officially the highest-grossing indie horror movie of the past 10 years at United States box office, a milestone it actually hit a few weeks back. The film's reported production budget was around $10 million, so Longlegs is turning a huge profit for distributor Neon. Domestically, it's their highest-grossing movie of all time. No word yet on an at-home release for Longlegs. Stay tuned. Yeah, Longlegs is one of those films that it really stuck with me. I came out of the cinema going, yeah, that's good. It's good. It's pretty good. It's actually, it's one of those things that just kind of festers with you. I see it being divisive. I think, we talked about how the hype leading up to its release, I think, was one of those things that maybe set expectations a little bit too high for scares and whatnot. But I'm very keen to watch it again. I think I've already pre-ordered it for Blu-ray. I'm hoping, Second Sight or someone do a nice box set at some point. But yeah, it's a film that slowly takes its time sinking its claws into you, and then it doesn't really let those claws out of you. I really enjoyed Longlegs, and to see that it's done $100 million on a $10 million budget is really good news. So long may it continue. And then finally, back to horror gaming news. Dredge expansion, The Iron Rig, is available now on PC and consoles. Mike Wilson. The long wait for Black Salt Games' Dredge expansion, The Iron Rig, is finally over. The highly anticipated second expansion for the Lovecraftian fishing adventure is available now on PC via Steam, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch. Simultaneously, the complete edition of Dredge is now available across all digital platforms, bundling the base game with Blackstone Key, the Pale Reach, and the Iron Rig for the ultimate sinister seafaring experience. Intended to be starting anytime during the Dredge adventure, the Iron Rig expansion will include more than 50 new fish species to catch, as well as new characters to interact with and new hazards to overcome. In addition, players will confront the spread of a mysterious dark liquid threatening the region, whilst partnering with the Iron Haven Corporation to gather crucial resources and expand the Iron Rig. A sprawling structure that unlocks new opportunities and rewards with each edition, but progress also brings with it unintended and malicious consequences. And just in case you missed it, Dredge will also be getting a collector's edition this November. Pre-orders for the collector's edition are available now, which contain a physical copy of the base game, all of the DLC, as well as exclusive artwork and a reversible inlay. Along with that, you get the following: a 10cm replica of the mysterious Sign of Ruin talisman, a double-sided poster, map printed on stone paper, a complete compendium of all fish and their aberrant variants, a message in a bottle from Black Soul Games, and a metal double loon coin, all housed in a layered box featuring exclusive artwork. I've heard good things about Dredge. I probably would need to actually look at some gameplay videos, because the art style and just the description of the game just haven't grabbed my attention. I mean, the fact it's Lovecraftian does get me interested for sure, but a fishing game, I'm not enough of an indie gamer to have that kind of thing grab my attention fully, which, could well be more fool me, because I do believe that Dredge has had generally good reviews across the board. So video game fans, if you're fans of Dredge, you got a new expansion available now, so go out there and get it. Anyway, that is it for the horror news. That was the news. Ho, 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 ho. Bosh. Right. It's now time to head over for a review or two. First up, we are talking about Lore. Lore, as mentioned, is a new film from Icon Films. It comes to the Icon Film channel from August 26th. It stars Richard Brake, Andrew Lee Potts, Bill Fellows, Rufus Hound. And do I have the director details? I probably should. It's been distributed by Kaleidoscope Home Entertainment. Theatrical release is coming 27th of September. Directed by James Bush, Patrick Ryder, and Greg Johnson. So, this is a new anthology film. It is an anthology. As with all the reviews, I'll give you a brief overview of the plot, just a brief sort of synopsis, talk about the highs, lows, give you my score out of 10. So, an isolated group of backpackers innocently tell their favourite spooky stories around a campfire, unaware that with each word they say, they unleash another supernatural horror into reality. So, we've got our kind of general setup, group of campers going out in the woods, and they meet up with Richard Brake's character, who's kind of overseeing their excursion into the woods. His character's called Darwin. He's their guide. And he kind of has this talking stick where basically when you have the stick, you have to tell a tale. You have to give the woods a story, give them some lore for kind of, I guess, safe passage for the evening. So it goes around to the various characters who then each tell a story. And it's British horror. There's sort of British humour amongst them. But they all go into these different tales. The ones that stuck out for me were there's three main stories, and there's a lot of, and I suppose I should say the violence ramps up as each one goes along, and the highlight is probably the third story, which is kind of an out and out slasher with almost a homage to demons. Not that it has demons in it, but just the setting. Or I guess you could also say homage to Popcorn, another kind of horror from 80s, 90s. My first kind of thought was the gore is quite well done, and the stories are quite succinct. They don't outstay their welcome. First one is a chap who has wronged the wrong people and is being pursued through this warehouse, but he is seeing this really nasty looking monster eviscerate the people, but who will believe him? And one of the first kills in that is like an eye being torn out. And that's always one of those kills in a horror that makes me kind of squirm, because it's just a bit like, it's just nasty. Like, we talked about doing a Lucio Fulci show, and he's kind of known for eye gore. But by the time of the third short story, another character, each of the stories has someone getting their eye taken out. I don't know if that was a conscious decision as some sort of connective tissue, or just, you know, let's freak them out by having an eye attack. I'm not sure. Don't know if it's a bit low-hanging fruit potentially. But all of the shorts are well made. The story in the second of the shorts is to do with swingers. Oh no, it's actually 4 shorts. I'd forgotten about the ghost short. The ghost short was okay, but it's a little bit forgettable, as is proof just there. So the third short has swingers, who, which includes Rufus Hound. I don't know what he's done for a while, but I remember him from British TV as like a host, kind of similar to that guy who looked like the Lion from The Lion, Witch and Wardrobe. I can't remember his name. I'm terrible with names, as we all well know. But Rufus Hound was like a British TV personality who was everywhere and then all of a sudden nowhere. Well, he's now doing horror from the looks of this. And he is quite entertaining in this. I think there's definitely a future in film, if he hasn't already done film. Involving a quite creepy looking cult who basically deal in the macabre and sacrificial practices to deities. It's pretty interesting. And then the fourth short story involves a wronged cinema employee who snaps. And I think that is definitely the high point for me. There isn't anything really negative in this film. It doesn't drag, as said. The gore is pretty good, and it's staggered in a way that it builds up. In terms of scares, it's decent. I wouldn't say that any particular story gave me the heebie-jeebies. But Richard Brake's performance, it's quite a small role that he has as part of like the connective tissue throughout the film. He does just have this menacing air about him. Like, there's moments where he's doing monologues and it's directly into the camera, and he's just got the creepiest smile. Like, he rarely misses from what I've seen. So he is definitely a highlight in this. The music in it was fine. The music wasn't a standout. It was kind of your typical British low to medium horror budgeted soundtrack. It did its job. There's a couple of jumpy moments here and there. So yeah, I think generally this was a pretty decent watch. I don't have the Icon Icon Film channel. I probably should actually check out what's on there. I've only recently had the MGM Plus subscription, which I had for a month, and watched a couple of bits. But I need to check out what is on the Icon Film channel. I mean, if they are releasing new horror films, not new exclusives, then maybe it's worth a trial, free trial, hopefully. But on the basis of this, if this is the sort of output they'll have, I will look at some point to check out what else they've got. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 for lore. And as mentioned, that comes to the Icon Film channel, 26th of August. Theatrically, it's in September. September 27th, it's got a theatrical release. 7 out of 10 for lore. And that moves us on to our final review. What I saw in the cinema last night, Alien Romulus. Alien Romulus is a 2024 American science fiction action horror film, directed and co-written by Fede Alvarez, produced by Scott Free Productions and Brandywine Productions, the 7th installment in the Alien franchise, and it serves as a standalone interquel That's a new term I've not heard before. Set between the events of Alien and Aliens. Film stars Kaylee Spaney, David Johnson, Archie Renault, Isabel Merced, Spike Fern, and Eileen Wu. Its plot follows a group of young space colonists who, while scavenging a derelict space station, come face to face with a xenomorph. As per usual, highs, lows, blah, blah, blah. And then my score at the end. What I will say is I'm going to try and avoid spoilers in this review. We will potentially have a bonus podcast full of spoilers later next week. I feel to kind of go... Okay. I was initially going to say I feel that to even start talking about the plot will give away spoilers, because it was something that I wasn't aware of, how the film opens. Like, straight away, that does set up the encounter for the film. So I think kind of mentioning that would be a bit of a spoiler from the start. So I was debating with myself, do I say minor plot spoilers incoming? Or do I just talk about this in a way where I don't reveal that? I think I will try and do the latter, just because if you are thinking about watching this, try and know as little as possible. So the film opens how it opens, and we then meet Rain Carradine, who's an orphan working with her adopted brother Andy, which is a reprogrammed synthetic human, at the mining colony Jackson Star. When her contract is unexpectedly extended, she agrees to join her ex-boyfriend Tyler on a salvage mission to a derelict spacecraft to retrieve cryonic stasis chambers. These chambers will allow Rain and her friends, Tyler, his pregnant sister Kay, cousin Bjorn, and girlfriend Navarro, to escape to the better living conditions of planet Uvaga. Andy's ability to interface with spacecraft systems is crucial to the mission. And this is where it then leads them to the Romulus and Remus space station. So that's your general initial kind of setup, the introduction of the characters. We get a pretty good intro to the world that the general characters live on. Like, you have to kind of think that outside of Marines and company people, we've only really met Ripley. I mean, I guess there's the prisoners. I don't really like Alien 3 and the space pirates in Resurrection. But really, in terms of from a character background standpoint, it's kind of just Ripley and then the company. And the company we don't really know that much about other than they're nasty. So getting this opening introduction, which is quite kind of Blade Runner-esque, like the planet that they're on, the mining colony that they're on, it does have that kind of Blade Runner feel to it. There's no sunlight, and basically the employees are just treated as just, I guess, almost disposable. Like, a number of the characters have had parents that have died mining, and it just seems to be that keep going, keep mining, just do your job. And when Rain goes to basically finalize her contract, she's done the required hours that they're prescribed to do, just based on however the job system works there. She's told that, there's been recalculations to the contract, so your contract, which you've completed 12,000 hours, that's very good, thank you very much. Your contract was recalculated and it's now got 24,000 hours of work to be completed before it's finalized. Just that whole bullshit of changing the goalposts, and that there really isn't any care there. And when you're young, working all the hours in darkness and just seeing everyone around you die in the conditions of where you've got to work, you've just got to hope that there's a better world out there, there's a better life out there. And so then the prospect of that potentially being possible, and the only way that's possible is with going into stasis, because the trip is 7 years or 9 years away, and that can only be done in stasis because you're not going to be traveling with 9 years worth of food and water and all this stuff. So that's the general setup, and that they found that there's this spacecraft, but it's actually a station. It's kind of akin to Alien Isolation, which is another thing I didn't mention earlier on, actually, that that is currently, for a limited time only, 75% off on the Xbox store, and I think also the PlayStation store. So I have picked up Alien Isolation, the complete edition, for like £11. So, or it might have been £8. £8 maybe. So we're going to be streaming that. I'm going to try and stream that. I wasn't very good at it when I played it when it was launched, but we'll try again. I'll see if there's a different difficulty setting. It does have an Alien Isolation sort of feel to some of the aesthetics, like the save points from Alien Isolation there in this film. So having that acknowledgement and aesthetic, I think, is quite good. And that leads into, I guess, a positive that can also be a little bit of a minor negative, and some people it's a big negative. Opinions, everyone's got one. This film is a little bit fan servicey. Now, it's not to the point that it made me dislike it. Like, I loved the fan service in Ghostbusters Afterlife, and some people just hated it and just thought it was tacky. I really loved it. It really pulled on my heartstrings, connected me again to that world that I grew up with. With Alien Romulus, the fan servicey bits, it's a bit more of a greatest hits film of the Alien series, and that's not a term I've coined. I've seen that online, but it does take certain little moments here and there from the series. Some of it is a little bit more blatant than others. Like, there is a moment with a iconic piece of dialogue from Aliens that gets used for a bit of a laugh here. I mean, I chuckled at the same time as a few other people did when I saw it in the cinema, just because of the delivery. But it just felt like, just think basically, it's like if Die Hard 5 or Die Hard 10 had characters in the middle of nowhere going, "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker." It's just like, yeah, okay, that was what was said in this film. Like, you don't have to keep doing it. You don't have to do those moments. It feels like I'm ragging. I'm not really. It's just that's one particular example. There's a couple of other bits where you can see where the inspiration was and where it's a bit of a wink and a bit of a nod to some prior entries. But it's not. It wasn't too obtuse in terms of fan service to make me think that this is, oh god, bad, cheap, tacky. It wasn't like a particular horror series that I generally love, but in the last entry, the 60 or 70-year-old character was wearing the same clothes that they wore when they were 16 in the first film. The whole purpose being for fans to go, oh, look, they're wearing the same clothes they wore in the first film. It's like, yeah, but why would they when it's like 60 years later, or 50 years later? It's purely there to make you go, oh, that's cool. You know, it's little things like that where you just think, oh, Jesus, it makes me eye roll. But the things in this weren't to that extent. Yeah, I think the only thing is just, it's a couple of moments of dialogue, because there are a few moments of dialogue that are just lifted straight from other films that I thought, okay, didn't necessarily need to do that. There is also a character where they have done the kind of AI, I'll say de-aging, but it's not de-aging. They've used an image from an actor who isn't available to be in this film. And I don't think that looked great. It looked very Uncanny Valley. The voice was pretty good, but it just felt like that wasn't necessarily necessary. You could have introduced another new character for that role. You didn't need the, oh look, it looks like that person. It just, again, I have to be very vague. I'll be able to go into a lot more in spoiler show. But those are minor quibbles. The soundtrack, like the audio in this film, is incredible. Visually, it looks brilliant. The kills are pretty nasty. The final third of the film, I had heard that some people said final third is gruesome, it's horrifying, it's divisive. Some people say, no, the film falls off in the third act. Like, oh, what was that ending about? I didn't mind the ending. It is creepy. It is quite shocking. It does have its influence with another entry in the Alien series. But it wasn't like it was a negative. This film does a pretty good job of acknowledging the entries that came before it chronologically and having a bit of a wink and nod at some of the later entries that have come after it. Some ways done better than others. Kayleen Spenny I thought was very good in this. David Johnson I think is kind of like, he was a bit of a scene stealer as Andy the android. His role in this I think was just really, really brilliantly portrayed. Like, I'm not aware of David Johnson. I don't think I've seen him in anything else. He's done like a few BBC shows and HBO shows, but him and Kaylee Spenny as the leads were brilliant in this. My only negative, I suppose, and I know that I've mentioned a few sort of fan servicey things, and it might have seemed a little bit like a gripe, but they're not really. They're just things that I think are worth mentioning. The only one that I just really, really quite disliked was a guy called Spike Fern. I haven't seen them in anything else. They've had small roles in Sweetheart, The Batman, and After Sun. I couldn't tell you who they were in The Batman. It's a good film. It's very dark. He was so annoying in this film. So if you've seen the trailers, you'll have heard moments where there's dialogue and someone's got a proper little Cockney accent like this. Oh, just, yeah, bah, 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 bah. And it stands out a bit because you're not really... Well, you have heard that, I suppose, in Alien 3, everyone's a Cockney. But his role as this android-hating member of the group who are going to smuggle off from the space station the cryo chambers, he is really quite annoying in this film. I get he's not been made to be a likable person, but you kind of hope that he dies just because of his character. And not necessarily saying he's a bad actor. If the role was to be the least liked person, then hit it out the park. If it wasn't, then don't know. But yeah, I think the acting was pretty good on the whole. No one was poor in this. It moves along at quite a pace. Like, it does feel like a version of Alien and a version of Aliens. It does that balancing job quite well. I do wonder if maybe part of the running time was cut down a little bit, just because it is very pacey when we get into the second half. But it does, the director has said that it goes quite Aliens with the action pace in the second half of the film. The face huggers are shown as pretty damn scary in this film, because this is the first time that we've really kind of seen them as a menace outside of the Aliens scene with Newt and Ripley. We're going to ignore Alien vs Predator. That's not canon as far as I'm concerned. But they are quite a menace in this film. They're done in a way that just makes you think, oh my god, get away from that thing. And yeah, the xenomorph. I don't know if you've seen the trailers. They do harken back to the alien from Alien. Like, they look massive, and the whole sort of dome-shaped head, it does go back to that kind of original design. The metallic-looking teeth, it all looks pretty good. I think that this is a proper return for the xenomorph. I remember my hype for Alien Covenant that the xenomorphs were back, because we didn't have them in Prometheus other than the sort of proto-xenomorphs. But the xenomorphs are like one of the weaker parts of Covenant. Like, it was such a swing and a miss. Whereas this is a swing and a hit. It's not perfect. It isn't on the level of Alien and Aliens, which are kind of just masterpieces in space terror and action horror. But it does tread the line between both. It is a step down from those two films, but for me, when you compare it to the other entries in the series, it's such a big step up. Like, for me, it would be Aliens and Alien. I've always just preferred Aliens. Like, Alien is brilliant, but I've always just preferred Aliens. Also, Aliens has the Alien Queen in it, which is still one of my favourite reveals in cinematic history. And there's a bit of a gap, and then we have Alien Romulus. Then there's a bit of a gap again, and then we've probably got Prometheus. I don't know if I'd put Alien 3 above Resurrection, and I think I'd put them both above Covenant. I think I'd put them both above Covenant because Alien 3, the CGI lets it down. It is quite a dark and nasty story. And what they do to some of the characters is just atrocious. But it has some quite good moments peppered in here and there. I do think it's dull. And when people say Alien 3 is actually one of the best ones, it's like, he's just saying that for attention because everyone's ragged on it for years. It's kind of the same with Prometheus. And I'm sure the same with Covenant at some point. But Resurrection, when it gets going, isn't too bad. The hybrid near the end is kind of crap, but it also bites into someone's head or bites into two people's heads. It's pretty nasty. It just looks a bit crap. The tone in the first half hour of the film, though, I just really didn't like for an Alien film. Yeah, I'd probably stack up my Alien rating that way of Aliens, Alien Romulus, Prometheus, Alien 3, Resurrection, Covenant. Alien vs. Predator is the first one, is kind of fun, but it's just nowhere near the same level. And Alien vs. Predator Requiem was just dirge. So for Alien Romulus, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I had a great time watching this. It isn't on the brilliant level of Aliens and Aliens, which are like 9s to 10s. Just throwing it out there. But it is really, really, really a lot of fun. Acting's pretty good. The violence is pretty good. They do some new things in this, which some people may find divisive. I thought was pretty good. The setup for it, I think, was really, really interesting. And I liked how they went about that, how they went about the introduction. Not going to be for everyone. I get that, but I really like that as a fan. And yeah, it was good. It was a greatest hits of the Alien franchise. I think I could have just done with a couple of moments that were just exact replicas of other moments that just wasn't necessary. And also the iconic line from Aliens, or one of the iconic lines from Aliens, being used for a bit of a giggle. Yeah, that hasn't sat well with me. That's one of those things where, like I say, I went in the cinema, and then the more I've thought about it, I'm like, that was a powerful moment in Aliens, and it was played up for laughs in this. I don't know. I got a little bit defensive of Aliens with that. But no, 8 out of 10 for Alien Romulus. And that brings us to the end of another edition of the Ministry of Horror. Be sure to like, follow, whatever on the podcast platform of choice, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. These go out on YouTube. Just search for Ministry of Horror if you're listening to this on podcast platforms. You get the YouTube videos. I put graphics up on screen. Every other week we stream on twitch.tv/Tezzius, Tezzrius. Be sure to follow. I'm going to try and do a bit more Call of Duty just whenever. You know, jumping in with a bit of Modern Warfare 3 multiplayer. That was a lot of fun. We do now have Alien Isolation, which I've purchased purely for the role of streaming. So you'll probably see me jump, because I'm a very jumpy person when I do horror stuff. Be sure to check that out. And have yourself a great weekend or week or whatever of horror. When we do the next live show, we will be talking about Lucio Fulci's Gates of Hell trilogy, which is The Beyond, City of the Living Dead, which I think is the other way around, and then The House by the Cemetery, with the irritating kid that is called Bob. I will see you later on. Catch you later, ghouls and fiends.